Thank you so much for joining us for another episode 6 of BroTalk, open dialogues about money, life, and mind. We really appreciate you guys being here. Please like this video, share the video if you haven't. We would really appreciate it. Today we're going to talk about 3 other qualities, about arrogance. When is it good to be arrogant? You might like, what? What are you guys talking about, right? Well, join in the conversation. We're going to talk about love and also about hatred. Love, the different types of love, how to spot a tóxica or tóxico, the red flags of toxic people, and other types of love, if they're good or bad, and why and why not. And last but not least, we're going to be speaking about hatred, the different types of hatred. Why is it so dangerous? Or which one's the most dangerous and why? This is going to be a very packed psychological episode, so stay tuned, guys. So come, join our conversation. All right. So I think... So the first thing I want to talk about is arrogance, right? Wow. So, I wrote a couple things here. So I want to, and I actually got this quote from the book that we did this book, Orchot Sadikim, and I wrote it down, which is this, and I think it's interesting. And then it gave me, it made me go down a rabbit hole, which I want to share with you. So first is that arrogance is an inferior trait in most of its ways. It's the opposite of shame. In the last episode, we spoke about shame, right? So arrogance is the opposite of shame, right? A man of shame overlooks offenses. He pities people. He pardons and forgives. But the person who is arrogant and stubborn does not forgive and is not ashamed before any person. And all they do is rebel and commit all types of evil things, evil deeds, without shame. That, in a nutshell, according to this book and other sources, is like arrogance, right? Shame is the opposite. And we spoke about last time that shame is that thing that has been implanted in our minds and our conscious. And it tells you, hey, you did wrong, or like, you should really show more empathy or compassion, right? Like, do this better, do that better. Mm-hmm. That's shame. It makes you feel bad. But in a good way, right? I'm not talking about going into depression, but in a good way. Arrogance is just the opposite of that. So when I read that, right, I asked myself, and I want to ask you this question as well, right? There's a part here that says arrogance is an inferior trait in most of its ways. So I find that fascinating because usually when people think of arrogance, someone who's super arrogant, you always think, oh, that's the worst quality, which I do think it is one of the worst qualities out there. But according to this quote, most of the time it's a bad thing. But there could be times where being arrogant can be a good thing. It can be. I just want to see your thoughts before I share what I found. What do you think about that? Like, when do you think arrogance can be a good thing or necessary?
I believe arrogance can be a good thing. When I guess you're in an environment or amongst surroundings where people are doubting you, or maybe people don't believe in you. Mm-hmm. People aren't giving you any type of confidence or any type of self-esteem to boost you up. People are actually trying to bring you down. Maybe that's like the first thing that clicked in my head. Maybe in those moments, having a certain type of arrogance, knowing the type of environment you're in, can help you push through, can help you recognize that, hey, my ability or the importance of what I'm doing in that scenario, I could surpass this. Mm-hmm. And maybe that little bit of overconfidence can help you pass that, that borderline, instead of just having a certain amount of confidence. When you have people doubting you, when you have people pushing you down, maybe you have to like push through a little bit more. You're gonna need that little bit of arrogance to get there. That's where I would say that arrogance could take you somewhere positive, depending on the environment.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So I think...
or am I wrong?
So according to the research I found,
I'm wrong.
You were kind of close, kind of.
Okay.
So let's see if there's some similarity. So for example, the good, ready? So according to the Journal of Personality, there's like this journal, right? The Journal of Personality. Okay. It says people that have increased levels of narcissism, someone who's a narcissist, a lot of times they have increased levels of arrogance, right?
Okay.
So people that have increased levels of narcissism, which a lot of times they're going to have arrogance, helps them increase their self-esteem, right? It helps. Sometimes the arrogance can help you, kind of like what you said.
Yeah, okay.
It can help you get more self-esteem. The next thing I found, according to the Journal of Applied Psychology, it says moderate levels of arrogance can enhance a person's ability to deal with stress and can persist through failures and setbacks.
Okay.
And the last one is, it says people with arrogance, with a certain amount, like moderate amount of arrogance, use that as a buffer against negative emotions. So kind of like they use the arrogance, they're basically using the arrogance to put away the negative emotions for the moment. So kind of like compartmentalizing.
Compartmentalizing, yes.
So according to the research, it's kind of saying what you said.
Yeah, that's kind of how
What do you think?
That's kind of how I was putting it, right? Like, I just gave it as an example, right? If you're in an environment where there's a lot of pressure and people want you to fail.
Like basketball?
Like if you're in a basketball game,
Okay.
right? And you're in front of millions of people, just like the NBA, right? There's going to be a moment where you're not at home in your home court.
Mm-hmm.
You're in someone else's home court. And you're obviously, being the away team, you're going to experience trash talk or an environment where people want you to fail because they want their team to win, which is natural. But in those moments, that, energy that you're receiving from the outside crowd, you need to be able to surpass it, because that could give you negative thoughts. That could boost down your confidence. You miss a shot, you didn't, close out the quarter the right way. You made a bad pass. Someone got a steal off of you. That could bring your confidence down, especially knowing that you caused your team a point, or people are trashing you because you didn't make a correct play. And sometimes people can say amazing things that can bring your confidence down. So if you have that little bit of arrogance in moments of like that, it can help you, like you said, compartmentalize those negative feelings that you have at the moment. And once you're able to compartmentalize and tell yourself, no, like, in a sense, if
I'm better than you,
like, I'm the shit. Like, I know what I'm capable of doing. And then you just attack. And having that type of confidence can help you surpass those negative thoughts that you gain, or the negative comments that everyone else is making against you.
But like, what's the line though? Because I also found research that shows the opposite of what arrogance can do to you, and it's from my perspective, it's worse than the good, right?
Right.
But like, what's the line between like for example, if someone's going to play in the NBA where millions of people are watching you and millions of dollars are staking your championship, I understand you might have to use this to your advantage.
Yes.
But for someone who's not playing the NBA, like someone that has a normal life, right? What's the fine line? Like, what's the dividing line between like, I'm going to use arrogance because I need it now versus not, right? Because I don't think most people probably don't have to use the good part of arrogance in their everyday lives.
No.
What do you think?
I believe it's just
like, I think people
situation.
We should avoid it for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part, like we talked about last episode, we should work on always being humble and not, having that excessive pride or excessive self-confidence. We should always be humble in how we go about things, but understanding that we have capabilities and abilities as well. But I believe it's situational. When you could use that positive, that 10% positive of arrogance. And I believe that would only be in moments where like you're being brought down, or you feel like you need like an extra boost. And that's where I believe that positive side of arrogance can come from.
No, that definitely makes sense. Or maybe like if your life is in danger, or there's like a big reward, right? And you really need it. It's going to change your life and your family. Okay, fine. Then maybe I would understand that. But, it's fascinating because, yes, arrogance can do a lot of self-damage to your inner self, right? But I think one of the most horrible things about arrogance is that it can actually be very dangerous for you as a person. Because when you are very arrogant and the surrounding people can go against you, they'll get jealous of you, and even maybe your own family and friends or people that were connected to your acquaintances. If you're so arrogant, or it's so obvious that you're so arrogant, you think that you're better than everyone else, they're going to plan, right, with other people, or they might plan between themselves a way to bring you down. Because you're so arrogant, it's like going through a perfume, like going through Macy's.
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Too much.
It's too much.
And you become an unlikable person to be around.
100, and it's like no one wants to be around you. Like, no, we got to bring this person down.
Yeah.
And I know that you have someone in mind, a historical figure.
Yes.
Me too, but I want to hear yours first.
I talked about, when I was studying about arrogance, I read a little bit. Well, we all know the story of Adolf Hitler.
Yes.
And
Germany, Holocaust.
How much of a bad, hated person he was. He started in Germany. Once he took power, then he wanted to take over all of Europe, and he killed a lot of Jews. Well, mostly Jews, but he also attacked other certain religions. And it was just blasphemous what he did, right? But his arrogance led him and drove him to his own self-destruction. So that's more like that 90% that you talked about.
Yeah.
How that 90% of arrogance is where it's bad, where it could take you, right? And that's basically where it led him. Him believing that he had an exaggerated sense of importance towards others, and maybe the people that look like him and related to him. He was like, oh, these people are the most important people, and these other people, they're inferior. So that arrogance of his led him down, to a lot of poor choices, which ended up him, technically killing himself.
Supposedly he killed himself. That's what they said.
So yeah, that's like the negative part of having that type of arrogance.
Yeah.
What was your historical?
Napoleon Bonaparte, or Bonaparte.
I've heard of him, but I don't know much.
Well, they made a new movie about him.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't watch it. I heard it wasn't so good.
Okay.
It was with Joaquin Phoenix and stuff.
Okay.
But basically, in a nutshell, Napoleon he's the famous short French military guy, and he was also very influential in France. He's the famous guy where, like, if you see like a short Frenchman with his hand and his stomach like this, and the art, he always has his hand like this because he suffered from a lot of stomach problems.
Okay.
So he always had his hand like this, right? In the art, in the historical art.
Okay.
But basically, he was a French military leader, a political leader as well, and he was a genius when it came to military and how to govern France. And even to this day, things that he implemented back when he was alive, like late 1700s, 1800s, to this day, his thinking, his Napoleon code, like his thoughts were implemented into French legal systems and are kind of still practiced and used and thought today. But what's fascinating is that he was so arrogant that brought him down. And historically, a lot of his own allies and people that he worked with turned against him, and they brought him down. People like, and I actually I did a little bit of research. People like Joseph Fouché, who was the minister of police, or is it maybe Fouché? I don't know. I think it's Joseph Fouché, the minister of police. Charles Maurice, who was the foreign minister of France, and other other countries, they all worked together to make sure that towards the beginning of the 1800s, he would go down, and then he basically became a nobody. He had no power. But why? Because of his arrogance. He was so arrogant. He thought he knew it all. And yes, he was a genius. Listen, you could be wise, you could be good looking, you can have all these positive things, but if you're arrogant, it's going to kill you. No matter how smart, you can have the cure to cancer or the solution to world hunger. But if you're so arrogant, no one's going to want to listen to you. But something that I learned was that arrogance can actually, and I wrote it down here, arrogance leads to confirmation bias, which clouds your judgment, right? Which, when your judgment is clouded, your critical thinking is clouded. Guess what happens? There's an increased resistance, like a barrier for you, if you're arrogant, to get critical feedback, and there's a lower chance to engage in reflective thinking. So basically,
like constructive criticism?
Correct. Okay. But it's a whole process. You are so arrogant, you're so overconfident that you think you know it all. You basically fall into a bias, right? Once you fall into that bias, your judgment, your critical thinking, decisions all get like clouded, nublado, as they say, right? Clouded with all this. And then guess what? Your ability to have maybe someone else smarter than you help you out, you're not going to be able to do it because you're so blinded by your arrogance.
I find it interesting how both people that we mentioned, I believe they were like, in a sense, leaders.
They were both leaders.
They were both leaders, right? Either for good or bad, whatever. They were both leaders of their country, leaders of their nation, leaders of the world, in a sense. Not of the world, but you know what I mean. Like,
yeah, they had a lot of influence in the world.
Either bad or good, right? I find it interesting how arrogance is a challenge that all leaders must learn how to manage.
100%.
Right? So, and a little bit about Greek mythology. They always talked about the idea of hubris, which is basically like in a synonym as arrogance, right? It's basically having excessive pride, or excessive self-confidence. And it's defined as when an individual is positioned in a position of power, becomes so proud of himself that forms a delusion and begins to think themselves as a god.
Oh God.
Right? And in this case, that would apply to like Adolf Hitler, who he probably thought himself as a god. That leading to, when you think yourself as a god, right? Or get this mindset delusion of who you actually are, which is tied to arrogance, it shows the importance of how you must manage it as a leader of nations, or a leader of a group, a leader of a family. Why? Because if you're very successful or you have some type of power, it can affect others because of the way you go about it. Like, for example, they say that you become more impulsive once you have arrogance. You become less empathetic, and you stop really seeing others' points of view. So, right? So, like, as you said, when it comes to constructive criticism, if someone tells you something, you're like, nah, like, they just hating on me. Or,
they're jealous.
They don't know what they're talking about. They're jealous. And that's maybe someone else is giving you a different point of view. But once you develop that arrogance and you think yourself as a god, you think yourself as a superior and others as inferiors, then you're like, what does this person have to say to me? I'm going to become less empathetic. I'm going to start taking less points of views. And that's when it starts, that's that 90%. That's when it starts to get to you. And little by little, as arrogance being one of the worst traits you can have, you start to become little by little worse and worse of a person.
Wow. And it's fascinating because you're right. If you have certain positions or certain titles, right, there's certain things that you need to be careful even more of, or you should have more restrictions.
Correct. Yes.
Because it's going to be so easy for you to fall in that, right? Like a politician, right? Like everyone says politicians are crooks, right? Because it's like you can't find a good politician because they have so much power. They have so much influence over the county or the state or the country, right? Or maybe a part of the country. They have all this. It's just a matter of time when that's going to happen, right?
Right.
You know, it's fast because when you were saying this, before we go to the next thing, you just reminded me in the Torah, in the Hebrew scriptures, there's laws, right, for kings. Like, for example, the king is not allowed to have too many horses. He's not allowed to amass, to have too much silver or gold. Can't have too many wives. The king had to carry with him two, not one, but two Torah scrolls with him, right? Why were all these laws implemented? Because a king, a leader, you're prone to arrogance and other types of either bad qualities or situations where you can fall. So it's interesting that in the Hebrew scriptures, God, when he gives the laws to the Jewish people, and he tells them, whoever you point at as a king or whoever is your leader, the person needs to be spiritual. He cannot indulge in too many physical pleasures. Like, look, it's limiting the king's all these things. Why? Because he's going to get arrogant. Like, look at all my women. Look at all my gold and silver.
Bring them back down to earth.
To reality.
To reality.
Because at the end of the day, we're all humans.
Right.
Yes, you might have more power, more influence for whatever the case is.
Right.
But remember, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all going to die humans. We're all going to leave this earth, naked and just go back to the dust. Right. So calm down.
And I also believe that's very interesting how that king or whoever had to carry two Tauros, basically to remind himself that he's one of everyone else.
Correct. And in reality, you are a servant of everyone else.
Right. You were a servant of everyone else. But I also, one thing I wrote was maybe that helped the king, keep him down on his 2 feet on the ground. Mm-hmm. But also one way to avoid this type of arrogance or to not have it as a trait is surround yourself with people who have the courage to call you out.
But how's that going to work? Again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Mm-hmm. How's that going to work if, let's say, you already got high levels amount of arrogance? So even if people are calling you out, you're not going to listen because you already have all this arrogance that's clouding your judgment.
Well, right. I guess that would be more for like.
Is this more like preventative?
Preventative.
This one is more preventative.
Yes. I mean.
Or you have lower levels of arrogance, let's say.
I mean, I believe eventually, even if you have arrogance, if you surround yourself with people that are going to say yes all the time to you, you're just going to cultivate more and more arrogance. But if you have a type of arrogance, but you are continuously around people that give you constructive criticism, either way, you might ignore it. Either way, you might not pay attention to it, but these people are continuously calling you out. That could even if it's little by little,
bring you down,
bring your arrogance down, because people are constantly constructively criticizing you and calling you out on things instead of being yes. Then because a yes person isn't going to help you, undeveloped arrogance.
But do you think, I mean, I don't have an answer to this, but do you think someone who's arrogant is going to surround themselves by people that's going to give them criticism?
Probably not.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
There might be a level to it. Right? If you have reached a certain type of level, then you probably wouldn't. But I guess overall, it would be more of a preventative. If you want to prevent this type of quality, you should probably hang out around people that will be real with you, right? Be authentic, call you out on your wrongs, and not just say yes to satisfy you in a sense, right? But I think it's probably one of the worst qualities you can ever have, right? But I also think just like there's the worst, is also one of the best qualities you can also have, which is love.
Love, okay.
Right? And love is an intense emotion of affection, of warmth, of fondness in regards towards a person or a thing, right? So the way I see love, I'm not going to describe it, but I'm going to give you of how important love is.
Okay.
I believe love is everything. Love is the category, is the roots to all virtues, to all great traits you can ever have. You want to have these traits, and you have these traits, but first you must have love. That's where it originally comes from, right? So what I wrote down here is love is the root for every virtue. Virtue is the quality of being morally good through your behavior. So just like a tree starts off with its roots. You start off with its roots, and then it starts growing. Like a fruit tree. Eventually it has to blossom. And once later on it gives that fruit are the virtues. And those virtues could be compassion, forgiveness, courage, generosity, humility, patience, acts of service. So it's like you have that tree, it grows, it expands, and then you get all these different apples, right? And then this apple is patience. This apple is acts of service. This apple is humility. This one is generosity. But where is it all coming from? From the roots of love. So that's the importance of love. Without love, you cannot try to grow these fruits. You cannot try to grow these virtues. That's the way I see love, how important love is. And it's probably the most important trait you could ever have.
Interesting. I think that's and I like the visual you put, like with the tree and the roots and the branches, and then blossoms, then the fruits come out. I think it's good. Right. I would say it is a very important, maybe I would also say,
I believe it's the most important.
It definitely is up there. But I would also say that love is a great thing, can be a great thing, but it can also be a dangerous thing.
Of course, yeah. It's like the opposite. That 90-10 that you described of arrogance. Maybe 90% of love could be great.
And 10% bad?
10% could be bad. Depending on where you were going to go. I didn't know.
Correct. I feel like sometimes love can be more than 10% bad. I wouldn't say maybe 50-50. Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Maybe 51-49. No. But maybe like 80-20, because if love is not harnessed, if it's not like pushed in the right direction, because love doesn't know the bounds a lot of the times, it can actually, the results can be tragic if that love is used for bad things, right? And I wrote something here, that love can ruin a person's deeds when it gets the upper hand over wisdom, right? So again, there could be a good type of love in one category, but then depending on how you harness it or how you move that love in the same category, it can then become bad. Right. And based off this book, it mentioned different categories of love that I want to briefly just share with you, and maybe we can see the good and the bad.
Yeah.
For example, now this first one I don't have any experience in, but you do, the love of a parent, the love of a father, the love of a mother, right?
Yeah.
But that can go the right way. You raise your kid the right way. You show them love, right? If a parent shows their kid love, the mom and dad, they're going to be a healthy, emotional, most likely a good person, a good kid.
Yeah.
But if there's no love, obviously something bad can happen, right? Or you can spoil them too much, and your excuse is, but I love them. I want to give them everything. I don't want them to suffer or go through anything. So my question to you is, because you're a father of a son, because I can only talk about from what my father has told me, other fathers I've spoken to, and from what I see from you. I guess my question to you is, what would be the line, the dividing line between letting your child decide, right, and you telling your kid what to do, right? Because again, a lot of parents I've seen, right, not all, but a lot of times they'll let their kid do anything they want, and their excuse is, I love my son, I love my daughter, I want them to have anything they want. So what do you think about that mentality?
I believe it.
And it's love. Is it love or not?
That's tricky, right?
It's controversial.
It's controversial because no one is doubting your love for that child, right? Meaning, oh yeah, I'm not correcting him because I want him to do this, do that. But then there's also a fine line where, like, is that really love? Are you really loving your child if you're not showing any type of discipline? Understanding that we all have certain type of bad traits, either we're born with or we cultivate.
Yes.
And if you don't ever correct them, especially at a young age, then is that really love? Are you really, because you could, like, as an example, you giving a kid something, they're going to show you some type of appreciation. But if you never teach that kid to say thank you, teaching him manners is a show of love. So, and then he could portray that love towards others. Once others are being kind and polite to him, he could be polite back as well.
Okay.
But if you just let your kid not say anything and, oh, he's just a kid, this and that, and you never ever teach him some type of discipline, then I don't really, not that I would doubt your love for your kid, but I guess I would doubt your teachings towards him.
Do you think their teaching is bad because they're just lazy, or they don't care, or a mix, or something else, like the parent?
They could be lazy, or maybe they themselves were brought up like that. Because we have to understand as well, because I think, psychology proves this. Once you're given everything and you're spoiled, you tend to be very ungrateful. And that could start off as a kid. You're just given everything. You never have to work for something. Then it naturally becomes an expectation. Right? Oh, yeah, I always get this. I always get that. I always get away with this. I always get away with that. And that's not love in a sense towards your kid. If you want your kid to really learn these traits and be a part of them, you must teach them the realities of life and understand that not everything is going to go the way you want it to go. But you must act a certain way as well. And that's me loving you, me understanding that there's a world out there that could be very scary, could be very dangerous. But I'm teaching you how to go about it. But I'm teaching you with love, with discipline. Because then you're just going to go based off emotion. Oh, I feel this way, so I'm just going to act upon it instead of thinking logically and be like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should do that. So I believe if you're able to distinguish and teach your kid those certain things, I believe that's a bigger love than spoiling them and letting them do what they want. I guess that is love, but.
So are you saying that if you spoil your kid for whatever the reason, obviously it's not healthy, right? Because they're not going to be educated well and they're going to come up with bad qualities. So you are saying that aspect of love is bad. It could be love or not, but right?
Yes, exactly. It could be love,
but it's just bad love.
But it's just a bad type of love because it brings out negative traits.
And it's like what I said earlier before I go to the second category. That love was harnessed not for the right reason or not appropriately, and now look at the results now. The kid's going to come out ungrateful or some other bad quality.
Yes.
Okay. But it makes sense. So, the love of a father can go good or bad. The next one, the love of money. Love of money. Now, obviously, you could love money, and it could be a good thing. If you, the way I learned this is, if you love money because you see money as a tool, right? You see money as a means to an end, not the goal, but as a tool for something bigger. It could be a good thing,
right?
But interesting enough, there's two ways that money can really mess you up, and I found this fascinating. Number one, this is from looking at it from like a spiritual perspective. But if you love money so much, and it's part of you love money.
Yeah.
When you have that love for money, you're going to find it hard to believe that God is there to help you financially, or God has this ability to sustain you and to help you, right? So that's one negative. But the other one is that if you have this huge desire for money, right, it's a feedback loop. When you have this desire for this love for money, a very unhealthy love for money, it's going to cause you to be dishonest. Why? Because when you're dishonest or you cheat, it's easy to get money quicker or more of it, right?
Yeah.
So when you're dishonest and you cheat, and if you succeed in cheating or being dishonest and lying, right? If you succeed in doing that, guess what happens now? Once you succeed in being dishonest, your body, your soul, your mentality, you're gonna feed off. You're gonna you have this high. You're gonna feed off that success, and you're gonna want to repeat it again and again and again. It becomes a never-ending cycle, right, of dishonesty, of lying, of cheating, just so you can have more money because you love it so much and you see it as your God. So it's interesting, right?
It's interesting. They say money buys happiness. I believe that is true to a certain extent.
Yes.
Not fully, right?
Correct.
Money buys freedom, and freedom buys happiness.
Freedom can get you happiness, correct?
Right, exactly. So it is important to have money, especially in this world. We acknowledge that we have to get to a certain place if we want to have the riches of riches, right, in our life. But acknowledging that it's going to buy us freedom to be able to do those things that we want to do.
Yeah.
But once we put it as a God, as something we want to reach, and that's the only feeling of dopamine we always get through that money, then we start to put in money over family, money over God, and that's when it becomes dangerous.
Yeah, it becomes a problem. Yeah. The next one I want to talk about is, now I'm only saying this one because we're men.
Okay.
All right. Is love of women. Now, this is not, I'm not talking about if you love your wife or your girlfriend or your partner and you're building a good connection. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about love for women specifically, right? And we can talk about, I know we could do a whole episode on this.
Yes, we can.
But I think this is good because, people know the expression tóxico, tóxica. That girl is toxic. This guy is toxic,
the red
right?
flags, the green flags.
The red flags. If you love, right, like you can love a woman, but if you love the wrong woman, and she's toxic or she's not a good person, but you love her or you're infatuated with her, right? There's a difference between that. If you love that woman, she's going to make you do bad things, or she's going to make you develop bad qualities due to her toxicity.
Right.
So before I go to the next category, I don't know if you have a couple of signs or red flags that people can look out. Like, guys, are there any red flags that guys can look out that if they see this in a girl, they're like, all right, either you got to be very careful and do more due diligence, or stay away from her, from a toxic girl?
From a toxic girl, I believe.
Yeah,
the number. I believe this is a very common answer, but I believe it's the number one answer when it comes.
Number one?
Yes.
All right, let's see if it is. Let's see if I agree. Go.
Lack of accountability.
Explain.
I believe the lack of accountability is a huge red flag. Meaning, I'm never wrong. It's my way or the highway, and I can never apologize to you.
Sounds like someone you dated.
Many. But
you want to mention their names?
Yes. Let's talk about I believe that the lack of accountability is the biggest red flag, right? Because we're all wrong. We all make mistakes. And if we're never able to admit them, we're never able to show to our spouse or to our partner that we could be wrong as well. Especially as a guy, right? Me as a guy, if you want to be a leader of your relationship, if you want to be like the head of household of your relationship, a good head of household will always admit when they're wrong. It's not just always want to be right, and just because they're the head and it's because I say this, I say that. No. You have to show accountability, but it also applies, like we talk about, las tóxicas. You have to show some type of accountability as well. And I believe that once both parties, or in this case, las tóxicas, show that part of accountability, I believe you've caught a green flag. But if you start seeing signs of, not that you had to say sorry, but the fact that it doesn't maybe even come to mind that you could have probably said it, or sometimes you just say it in case, acknowledging potentially somehow someone else feels, it's a big red flag, at least for me. I don't know if you believe the same thing, but
I think it's a good answer. I think it's a very good answer.
Is it number one, though?
I mean, I don't think that there's a chart out there that shows these are the top. This is by objective data, statistic, and analysis the worst traits. But I definitely could see that because it's true. A lot of toxic men and women, right? They don't want to say sorry. They don't feel like it's their fault or their responsibility.
They let their pride, their ego,
and their arrogance.
They're arrogant, like we spoke about, right?
Get in the way.
Get in the way because, oh no, like, I've always been right about this. How can I be wrong this time? Right? Or this is how I've ran my previous relationships, and it was fine. But now in this one, it's not going right. And the sad thing is too that we a lot of us tend to attract toxicity. And I believe one of the reasons we tend to attract toxicity is because we have a lack of a good example.
Who's we?
Just
okay.
Anyone overall, right?
Oh, okay.
Sometimes why some of us, why am I always attracted to like a toxic girl or like this or that? Because I believe sometimes we lack a good example in our lives of someone who's not toxic.
A good mom or a good dad, or both?
It could be both, depending if you're a girl, depending if you're a guy, or the opposite, right? If you lack of a good example, then why wouldn't you be attracted to toxic traits if that's all you know? Because you're comfortable in that environment. That's how you grew up. So once you start seeking for the other sex, that is what tends to spike your excitement, your dopamine, because that's all you know. So once you get in a position of uncomfortability, meaning that you have finally caught someone who's a green flag, you're not used to it, it tends to be like, well, this is different. This is boring. Why? Because you're not used to it. You lack a good example of it. So that's just like a little bit an overall of something.
God, yo, you're going to need something. Wow. But you could do a whole masterclass on this.
Yes, I've had a lot of experience.
Just to add one point before I go to the last couple ones, is there's a thinking in the world of psychology. I forgot where I heard this, but basically, an infant's first love is the mother. Is the mother, right? Because like the mom's there, she's breastfeeding you,
both
right?
For a boy and girl, or just boy?
I definitely know for boys.
Boy, okay, let's stick to boys.
Okay, I'm not sure.
I don't want to
maybe for girls too. But I don't remember.
Yeah, let's just stick to that.
But at least for infant boys, their first love is their mother because she's there, whatever, right? And right when you're growing up, you see the example of your mother.
Of course.
So if your mother showed a bad example, you're right, because she was your first love. You again, not obviously not sexual, but like, but you love her because she is your mom. Those traits, subconsciously, you're like, you believe it or not, you're attracted to it. And when you try to find your partner, as you mentioned,
you look for that.
You look for it, but you don't realize it.
Yeah, that's so fucking.
You don't realize it. The only way to realize it, if you know this information and you're like, whoa, my mom is like this. Again, this is assuming she was a bad example.
Yeah.
She's like this. I cannot look for a woman like this. This is why I'm so attracted to this type of persona, to this personality. I got to look somewhere else. And when I find something good, let me hone on it, right, and stuff like that. But I did hear that a long time ago, but I just wanted to add that.
Interesting.
We definitely have to do another episode on this.
This would be a great episode.
Because I feel like you got like 20 other things to say about that. So the next step of love, and again, the love of a woman could be good or bad.
Be good or bad, yes.
This next one, I also feel like you could talk a lot about this. You don't have to go into detail unless you want to. It's basically love to those people who are close to you, like your parents, siblings, friends, co-workers, or other relatives. Now, the reason the book mentioned it is because this was fascinating. It says, obviously, love to your family, co-workers, siblings, or friends could be it could be a great thing, a beautiful thing, right? You have a good relationship, but it can also mess you up because your love to those people. Listen to this. A lot of time, your love to these people who are connected to you one way or another is often an extension of love towards yourself. So just like a lot of times, and this is everybody, it can be very hard to find your own faults in yourself. It could also be hard to find fault in the people and these people too, because these people are kind of connected to you, right? So you're going to have a type of bias when you're looking at them, when you're judging them, right? Because you love your father, your mom, your uncle, your cousins, your coworkers, your siblings, because you love them so much and they're kind of like a part of you, directly or indirectly. Just it could be a lot of times, it could be very hard for you to be like, I messed up here, I messed up there, unless someone tells you. When it comes to judging them or deciding if you should do something with them or not, or they're toxic or not, you might be more blinded because you love them, or your love is blinding them. So what I would say, and then I want you to say everything you have to say, is that in order to avoid that, you need to look at their track record. See what kind of person they are and what they've done with their actions. Because what they've done in the past is just going to be a very good indicator of the future. Like, were they loyal? Were they good to me? Were they reasonable? Were we able to argue but then solve things?
Right.
And look at the track record, and then you can make a decision.
So basically you're saying we tend to overlook or to go easier on people that we love, like as family, close friends, mother, father, whoever it is. Once they like make a mistake or maybe something they're not supposed to, we tend to judge them less and to like potentially overlook.
So yes and no. So there are times where you should judge less, right?
Of course, yeah.
But what I'm saying is that what I'm really trying to say is that if a lot of the times our families are toxic. Yes. They're not good people. They don't have good qualities. Yes, they're our family, but just because they're our family, does that mean that we should endure the suffering that they're going to give onto us? Most of the time, I would say no. So I'm saying that because they're our family and we do love them one way or another, when they do something to us or they're being toxic, we're not gonna judge them as harshly as like someone we just met,
of course,
or someone or a stranger, or like someone we're just meeting or just starting to date, and we're like, okay, you are toxic, I need to separate from you. Mm-hmm. And we might not do that because we're gonna say they're family, I can't really separate depending on who they are.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really saying. But no, of course there are times where if they make a mistake, you shouldn't be as cruel, or you should judge less because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Of course, when it comes to family, I believe we should definitely tolerate more just because of the love that we have towards them. And of course, give more chances as more than what we would give a stranger, of course. I think that's a given. The only thing is that, just as I believe we talked about a few episodes ago, you must only surround yourself with people that provide value to you. And sometimes
you said that, yeah.
And sometimes that can apply to your own family, unfortunately, right? Sometimes family can be very negative or not bring out the best in you, not really show that they're there for you. And that's why it was very important that you brought up track record.
Yes.
You have to look, what has this person been there for me? What have they done? And if this person continues to be the same person with those same bad habits, with never changing moments, events, then who are they really showing you who they are? So that's when you have to be able to, like, I guess, have that some type of separation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because regardless of them being family, not that you won't be there for them, but they aren't giving you any value. As a matter of fact, they could potentially be bringing you down.
Yeah.
And that can even apply to the closest family member you have, also to the furthest. But you have to be able to evaluate, what is this family member bringing into my life? And how could I use this? Or how can I excel in this value that they're giving to me, right? Because I'm trying to do the same for them. Sometimes they could bring you up, but at the same time, they could bring you down. And that's why that love, it's important to continuously always have that love for them, but make that love not make you blind.
Yes.
That's how I believe.
100%. And again, love to your family and friends can be a great thing, but it can also be a bad thing. Yeah. As I mentioned, love, depending on how you move it, how you harness it, can create evil. The last two, this was pretty obvious. I don't think we have to talk about it. Okay. The love or the abundance, the love of abundance of pleasures and indulgence.
Of course, yeah.
And the last one is love of honor. When you want honor, right? Now, what I would say, right, is, so I wanted to mention this first, that you wanting honor or people giving you honor is not always necessarily a bad thing, because maybe you are very smart, or you've done a lot of great things in life. You've given a lot of charity. You've written good books. You're a good movie director. You're a great player, and people want to give you honor. Like, oh, you're so great. You're this. You're this. They want to they want to like pump you up.
Yeah.
And you know, and maybe sometimes you want that a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that when that's all you want, and when you expect it, and it's like, if I don't get honor, then they're disgracing me. They hate me. They're jealous of me. It's when you take it to that. It's when you take it to that level. And I would say this, you know, and there's a very famous, it's a huge volume of books,
okay,
and right, called the Talmud. You know what the Talmud is.
Yeah.
So there's a story in there, and then I want to hear what you think about love of honor. So there's a story in there,
okay,
where God talks to a guy named Yeravam ben Nevat.
Okay.
He dies.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead, and God starts talking to him, and he tells him, right. So basically, God wants him to repent. He wants him because he wasn't really a good guy. So God's trying to give him a second chance. Okay. So he offers him a chance to go to be with God in heaven, and also so God is like, come with me to heaven. It'll be you, me, and King David, the three of us.
Yes.
And let's take a walk and let's talk and let's see if we can give you a second chance, kind of, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what happens is that Yeravam, this guy who wasn't so good, he then asked God, who's going to be leading the way? And God said, well, it's going to be King David. It's not going to be me. It's going to be King David that's going to lead the way as we're walking. This guy says, if it's David and not I won't take your offer. So this guy tells God, I don't want to go. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want a second chance. I'd rather be completely gone. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, of course, this story, right, is the extreme. But clearly, as we can see, honor can distort your thinking. Honor, right, that wanting that I need that honor. I need people to honor me and to see how great I am and I'm the best. And I need that. Like my soul, my heart needs that, right? Oh, sorry. It needs it. Can cloud your judgment, mm-hmm. And then you're not going to be thinking right because you're so. It's like you're flooded. Your entire brain and heart is flooded with this need, this love of honor. That even if God were to tell you something like in this story, God's like, listen, let me give you a second chance. Let's take a walk with King David. He's like, I don't want to do this. If God tells you to take a walk with me and King David, are you going to say no?
Of course. I'll take a walk with him.
King David is one of the best kings that ever lived, and it's God.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to meet God and talk to God, right? Yeah. But this guy was like, no, because King David's leading the way. I want nothing to do with it. If it's not me, I'm not going to go. So can you imagine that?
That's having too much honor. I believe it takes away out of the good that you could potentially do, right? You might have honor just like that person, right? And might do good, might do a good deed, might do a good, what you would call mitzvah. Mm-hmm. But now you're expecting, yes, they must say my name. Or they have to recognize that I was the one who provided this and I got to this place and mm-hmm. It's only for me because they're here. That, in a sense, the love of honor, the love of the acceptance of others, the validation of others, in a sense, the recognition of others boosts you up so much that love of honor, I believe, if I'm not wrong, would turn into arrogance.
Yeah.
Would turn into
or maybe
ego.
Or maybe you're already arrogant and that's why you have that love of honor.
Right. If you have arrogance, then you would have a love of honor because you're expecting this, what would it be? Like this bow down to you in a sense. Yeah. That's the way I would see it.
Interesting. No, 100%. So these were just again,
it's very interesting how you could, so many different types of love and how you could talk about
it. And again, these loves are not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
Right. The love of a parent, of a woman, of money. You can even love pleasurable things. You can even love good things in life. But there's nothing wrong. It just depends on
how you use it.
How you use it, how you harness it. You got it. And now that we're done with this, with love, we went from one extreme to the other. Let's go back to the other extreme.
Yes.
And let's talk about the last thing, which is about hatred.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. About hatred and about this quality. I think I'll just say one thing quickly that I want to hear what you have to say before I continue with a story that I want to mention.
Okay.
Hatred, right? There's different types of hatred. I'm not going to go into all of them.
Yes, okay.
But there's different types of hatred. But one of the worst ones is when you hate someone in silence. And actually, Nelson Mandela said this, and I'm going to read a quote that he said.
Okay.
He said, resentment and hate is like drinking poison and hoping that it will kill the other person or it will kill your enemies. That is what hatred, resentment is according to him. But I'm also saying that when you hate someone in silence, it's one of the worst ones. What do you think?
Yes, hatred is the intense dislike or ill will of something, right? Having intense disgust. It's like a type of, especially if we're looking at it from the negative point of view, right?
Yes.
It's like a venom.
Yeah.
Something that once it gets inside of you, it can be very dangerous. I believe it brings a lot of stress. I believe it brings a lot of exhaustion.
Yeah, 100%.
And especially if you're doing it in silence, you're constantly thinking of, as an example, right, of someone else and their great doings and the hatred that you have towards them because you haven't been able to accomplish what they have. But like you're doing it in silence is bringing you so much stress. And you're putting so much thought into it, so much energy into it. It could literally bring you a physical type of exhaust and mental type of exhaustion just because you're like constantly thinking about it. Because now, sometimes when you do things so much mentally, it can affect you physically as well.
Correct.
Just because it takes away that energy.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I would see it as hatred in silence.
Well, yeah, you're basically talking about a mind and body connection.
Yes, that was a great way to put it. Mind and body connection.
That's a real thing. If your mental and inner energy is all going towards this hate towards someone, right? Your body is going to feel that.
Right.
Your body's going to feel it, and it's going to cause all these types of not only like pain, like in your muscles and your joints, but also other health issues as well. Now, the reason I'm talking about hating in silence, and I would like to know your thoughts on this and maybe some other stuff you have.
Okay.
Was there anything else you wanted to mention about hatred?
No, I wanted to hear your story.
Okay.
And then because what I was going to focus on, how it's like the distinguish on how it could be necessary at times.
Okay. So let me mention my story, and that's interesting. When hatred can be necessary. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll get there. So, of course, hatred, when you hate someone, that disgust or that ill will that you said, when you have that towards somebody, but you communicate and you say it, right, and you're saying it out loud or to the person, right, at least you're communicating. And maybe, again, not always, but maybe, just maybe you can figure out why there's the hatred and maybe try to solve it. But the problem comes when you're in silence and you don't say anything, because it builds up and then something worse can come out of it. When in reality, at the end, maybe you could have fixed it, right? And the story or the example I wanted to give was about the two half brothers in the Bible, in the Hebrew Scriptures, in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 13. You remember Avshalom. In Spanish, is Absalom y Amnon. The two brothers, the sons of King David. You know, Absalom with the long hair and stuff?
Yes.
So basically, because this is, many people actually don't remember this story too much, which I'm going to just say quickly. But basically, Absalom, who later on in the book of 2 Samuel, he gets killed because remember his hair got stuck in a tree, and then a general comes and kills him, right? So he actually did not speak to his half-brother for 2 years. He didn't speak to him because he had so much hatred. Now, to be fair, the example I'm going to give is extreme, and I understand why he hated him. I would do too. But the point I'm trying to say here is that you can't hate someone in silence. You got to talk to them or bring a third party so you can talk or try to communicate, right? So basically, what happened was that the rape of their sister, Tamar, right? So Amnon had this crazy lust, this sexual lust for his half-sister, Tamar, which was the daughter of King David. And he comes up with this plan. Well, someone gives him this plan. He wants to sleep with her, right? So his friend tells him, listen, pretend you're sick, then tell your father to have her come and cook you a meal. And then once she brings you the food, tell her that's when you take advantage of her. So Amnon pretends he's sick and stuff. He tells his father, I'm sick. Can you tell my sister to cook something for me? I'm dying here. I'm sick. King David does that. Now they're alone in the house. And she starts to cook for him. And then once she brings him the food, he's like, oh, can you feed it into my mouth? I'm really sick. She starts to do it. And he's like, actually, come lay with me. I want to have sex with you. And she's like, no, don't do that. This is not good. He doesn't care. He rapes her. He takes advantage. And then basically, once he rapes her, he tells her, get the hell out of here now. But she's like, no. And he basically, when he throws her out, she's like half naked. And then Absalom sees this. He sees he finds out what happens. And from that moment on, he doesn't speak to his brother for 2 years. And then after 2 years, you see later on in the story, he basically finds a way to kill his brother. Now, what I'm saying is that in general, communication can help rid of this hatred that could exist. I'm not saying that Absalom should have forgiven his brother immediately or ever. Again, this is a very sensitive, controversial thing to talk about. But maybe if he would have reprimanded him and said, brother, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? Or maybe like push him around or like call his father, call people like, yo, look what happened here. Let's do something about it, right? Some type of communication. But instead he held it in and he waited 2 years and he found the right moment to kill his own brother, right? And this all happened. Why? Because Absalom did not speak to Amnon and he let this hate grow so much in him that then he took this action to kill him. Right. So again, I know this is a very extreme example, but it is extreme, but it's not, because there's so many people who they won't talk to someone they hate because, either they're scared or it's awkward or they're like, if I see them, I'm going to kill them. Okay. But if you don't say something, you don't try to solve it, right? That problem is never going to get solved. Never. It's going to get solved. And number two, something worse can happen later on. Well, what do you think?
I think it's true. Do you think hatred can lead to passive aggressiveness?
100%. Yes. 100% yes. That it can do that, yes.
Okay. So yeah, he probably should have definitely tried to solve it, but I could see why. I believe that's a very extreme example of hatred. I wouldn't put over someone who decided to hate someone like that for the rest of their life, because you are affecting someone else's physical and mental health by doing what he did to his half-sister.
Yeah.
So that's when I guess hatred can be necessary, but I guess
Correct.
to a certain extent, right? Not to the extent of trying to kill somebody, but having, I guess, a type of hatred towards an action of someone. Or a quality that someone else might have that you don't want to develop. So the reason I see hatred as a necessary thing is because hatred tells us what we like and we don't like, also what we value. One thing that I was able to read is how hate is important because it's the opposite of love.
Say it again?
Hate is important because it's the opposite of love, right?
Okay.
It's like the North Pole and the South Pole. Love and hatred. They're totally different, but at the same time, they attract to one another. How? Well, one thing I was able to read talks about there's two sides of the same coin. Love and hate, right? So one thing it talked about, it said, if there was no hate and only love, we wouldn't perceive love as love. These two ends are the same spectrum of emotion. Once you remove one, what you have left is no way to move from one end to the other or feel anything in between. What do you think of that?
So wait, are you basically saying that they're both important? Hatred is important because it's on the same spectrum as love, and because it's on the same spectrum as love, like on the same coin, if you get rid of, let's say love, you can identify hatred. This is hatred. Exactly. Let's avoid it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So you're saying it's important because then we can identify it?
Yes, basically, right? Because if you didn't have the other, but only one, you can't identify or put a certain thing in that category, right? Or you can't see any in between. So when you see an action of someone or a trait of someone, you can either love it or you can hate it. Or you could have it somewhere in between. But by having both ends of the spectrum, you're able to identify where you want to put these things, right? For example, there's there's an expression that goes, when there's great opportunity and great danger are two sides of the same coin, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit strange because things that are poles apart seem to be deeply connected, but then there's a famous phrase that says, never let go a good crisis. Never let a good crisis go to waste.
What does that have to do with the two poles and they're connected of love and hatred?
Meaning that something that could dread us down can also lift us up.
Okay, yes, okay. I see what we're just saying.
I believe it's like the same thing with love and hate. Love could bring us up and hate can bring us down. But now, by being able to distinguish between both qualities when it comes to certain traits and actions that other people do, or things you see, things you might want to develop, you're able to see what you like, what you don't like, and what you value.